Hello everyone, welcome to Azure Z2H series. This series is for people who are willing to start their Azure journey. No prior experience of cloud or Azure is required to understand this. In this course, I will introduce you with Microsoft Learn document and Azure Sandbox where you can practice your labs. So before we go and explore Azure, it's really important to understand what is virtualization. To understand this virtualization concept, let's take this hypothetical example of university where you have three servers. University has one web server, account server, and library server. Each server has 8 GB RAM and 1 TB hard drive. Web server is hosting university's website. Account server is managing university's account like students' fees or expenses of university and salaries of employees. A library server is managing library database. So web server, university is observing very high utilization of web server when university is declaring the results or when there are like admissions approaching, like students are browsing university's web page to see what are the courses offered by this. Same way, account server is kind of having high utilization when students are paying their fees. So maybe 1 month in a year, this server is highly utilized. There is another library server which we discussed. The library server utilization is moderate throughout the year, and maybe it's zero when there are vacations going on. So what's point I'm trying to make here? If you observe, you're not using this server capacity optimally. It means maybe most of the time throughout the year your web server is underutilized. Same thing goes with your account server and library server. So to make this resource utilization optimal, you can go for virtualization. In virtualization, you will have one box, which is the actual hardware box, or let's refer this as a host. On top of host, you will create three virtual machines like this. So one virtual machine can be my web server, another virtual machine can be my account server, and the third can be my library server. So beauty of virtualization is, imagine a scenario where it's same, the host is of 8 GB RAM and 1 TB hard drive. However, with the virtualization, you can assign same 8 GB RAM to this server, 8 GB RAM to this server, and 8 GB RAM to third server as well. Now, you must be thinking, what if this guy requests for 8 GB RAM? I mean, yes, it's not always highly utilized, but what if suddenly maybe this machine or two more machines are requesting for more RAM? Maybe what if like total RAM request is crossing 8 GB? And that's where clustering comes in place, where you will cluster all this your virtual machines on the host. You will have multiple hosts connected with each other, and they will communicate with each other. So suppose if this host is highly utilized, maybe these two machines are requesting more RAM and they don't get enough RAM. So uh, virtualization will look for any other host where there is RAM available, and the machine from highly utilized server will jump to another host, and it will be seamless. You will not even observe any kind of downtime or glitch when this happens. So again, when this host comes, like utilization comes to normal, another machine from another host can come here. So this is how virtualization allows you to share the resources like RAM, CPU, or the disk. So let's understand different types of cloud. I'm pretty sure you would have came across these terminologies like private cloud, public cloud, and hybrid cloud. Let's understand these three things in detail. So when we talk about private cloud is something which you manage. Okay, imagine a scenario where you are like starting some organization or some startup, and you like got three servers. the three hardware servers. On top of these three servers, you installed hypervisor and then you created maybe 10 virtual machines. So you brought the hardware, you installed hypervisor, you created virtual machines. So you are managing everything. You are managing power of those um, host, you are managing network, you are managing operating system, you are taking care of cooling system, everything. So that's what private cloud is. Public cloud is something where some provider or some vendor will give you ability to spin up the virtual machine. You don't need to worry about hardware procurement or managing power or network for actual hardware devices. So when I say vendor, it could be a giant vendor like Microsoft, AWS or Google. So Azure, AWS and Google Cloud are example of public cloud. And if I want to list private cloud example, I can list something like Hyper-V or VMware or Citrix. So as anybody can guess, what is hybrid cloud? Yes, it's combination of both. So usually people will have some on infrastructure running on their on-premises in the private cloud, and maybe for expansion or slowly they will add public cloud. So some resources are running or some applications are running on premises and some applications are running in public cloud. There are two important things which we have to understand here, private and public cloud. As it says private cloud, you will be able to access your private cloud on your private IP addresses. IP address range like 10 dot series or 192 or 172 series. These are the private IP address ranges. When we talk about public cloud, all this public cloud offering you will be able to access on public IP addresses. Usually people will get confused when they try to RDP machine which is in public cloud, and they will try to RDP with internal IP which is 10.0.0.5 IP. So that is not going to work as this machine is in public cloud unless and until you have express route or site to site VPN. But let's park those topic as of now. What I am trying to explain here is there are two types of IP addresses. One is internal or private IP address range, and there is something like public IP address range. Private IP address range you can use in your company. Say example, company A has IP address range of 10.0.0.5 or say slash 16. The company B can also have the same IP address range, but that's not the case with public IP address. Public IP addresses are unique throughout the globe. So when you deal with the public cloud, yes, you will reach public services on public endpoints. When I say endpoints, it's kind of IP addresses, public IP addresses. Let's discuss few other concepts. Another important concept is like capex and opex. Capex is capital expenditure and OPEX is operational expenditure. Capex is the upfront cost you spend on buying some physical infrastructure. It can be like storage devices, servers, network devices, and so on. OPEX is something which you don't spend upfront cost. It's pay as you go model. Imagine a scenario where you're thinking of starting some startup. However, as a startup, you will have limited budget, and then if you think of buying hardware, storage, servers, network devices, that's is what your capital expenditure. Over the time, definitely you don't need to buy them. So once bought, yes, it's initial investment, what we referring as a capital expenditure. So your upfront cost will be high, and it will reduce over the time. However, instead of spending such huge amount of buying hardware and network devices, storage devices, startup can go for OPEX model where you just pay for what you use. Example, instead of buying actual hardware for servers, maybe you can just spin up the virtual machines quickly in Azure and just pay on hourly basis or weekly basis as you use it. So it's pay as you go is what operational expenditure, and getting something initially or putting with huge money or capital expenditure, it's what capex. So let's discuss few key benefits of using public cloud or Azure. One is high availability. It's like whatever virtual machine you create in Azure, it will be highly available. There will be um, close to no downtime. Microsoft commits different types of SLA for different services. So whatever service you are using, that will be highly available. It's scalable. Scalability is another important concept, and you have to understand this in detail. Scalability is nothing but how easily you can scale up your resources. Imagine a scenario where your startup is now growing and you need to buy some more hardware, something like that. Or maybe your website is expecting good number of hits tomorrow morning. So you need uh, to scale your hardware uh, to some configuration where it will accommodate all those requests. So scaling has two types of scaling. One is horizontal scaling and one is vertical scaling. Example of horizontal scaling and vertical scaling. Let's consider one scenario where it's some web server which is hosting some website. Same like university website. Tomorrow it's like 1 p.m. there is a result, and 1 p.m. university knows that there will be a huge web request coming on their web server. So probably what they can do, before like 1 p.m. they can resize their server to say 32 GB RAM and 8 cores, something like that, from 8 GB RAM, right? So scaling up from 8 GB to 32 GB is what scale up, and this is what called as vertical scaling. When you talk about horizontal scaling, it's like adding one more web server to serve those requests. So adding another 8 GB web front-end server who will balance the load of incoming web request is what horizontal scaling. So this is what scalability. Global reach with Azure Cloud, you can have global reach. The same as I said, your startup is growing now, and you started this company in India, but now you have your customers in US, UK, Australia. Definitely, if they try to access your website from US, UK, or some other part of globe, there will be some latency. So you think of, okay, I should deploy some kind of web server in US region. So that can be done very easily. You have this global reach with Azure Public Cloud. Another is elasticity. Elasticity and scalability, these are like kind of confusing, but what you just have to remember is elasticity is something like happens dynamically or automatically. Example, maybe you did not uh, scale up your university web server upfront. However, you have some cloud solution in place which will detect, okay, there is suddenly load on a machine, maybe IOPS are high, or CPU utilization is going high, or say RAM utilization is going high. Then it will dynamically or automatically add another instance or resize the machine. So that's what elasticity. Then we have disaster recovery. Again, you would have heard this terminology fault tolerance when it comes to virtualization. Don't get confused with fault tolerance and disaster recovery. Fault tolerance is nothing but, suppose there is some web application or some financial application where customer cannot afford any downtime. So they will have two instances running of same workload. If one workload is goes down, another server will serve the request of that application. But in case of disaster recovery, if something goes down, if any your application goes down, then how quickly you can get your application back to track is what disaster recovery. So you get disaster recovery solution in Azure. Then we have security. Yes, security is very important concepts when it comes to public cloud, because security is both ways responsibility. It's the responsibility of vendor as well as customer. It's not like if Azure is like Microsoft Azure and Microsoft is managing your data center. Definitely, Microsoft will give you security against physical, threat, or say they will have their data centers secured. However, if you are using infrastructure as a service or you are creating Azure virtual machine, then it's your responsibility to secure the operating system of that machine and application level security. So other concepts like IaaS, PaaS and SaaS is what we are going to discuss in next series. Stay tuned. Thank you.